that right now. And so if you need to take a break, this is a 2-hour training. We have a couple presenters. So if you need to take a break and step away for a minute, please feel free to do so. Also for our presenters and for everyone that's joining us, please make sure that you are muted and turn off your camera. There will be a question and answer after each presentation. And again, thank you all for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. Oh, Brenda, you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate, and the staff of the Illinois Heartland Library System today for hosting and making today's broadcast and recording possible. I appreciate all the hard work behind the scenes. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Brenda Sprague. I'm an administrative assistant and grant coordinator for the First Judicial Circuit, Office of the Chief Judge. On behalf of Chief Judge William J. Thurston, I welcome you to today's special training. Our first presenter is Amy Clark, and she's the Community Engagement Director at Illinois Legal Aid Online. Amy?
Thanks, Brenda. Thanks, Kate. Let me share my screen here. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, great. So I'm Amy. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I work for Illinois Legal Aid Online. I'm going to tell you, also known as ILAO. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about ILAO, what we do, why we do it. And then I'm going to show you our website and give you an overview of the legal information and court forms we have on illinoislegalaid.org. Our purpose and mission is to simplify the law so that everyone can resolve their own problems when they can't afford an attorney or they can't retain a legal aid attorney. We want people to understand their legal options, make informed decisions based on those options, and represent themselves in court when they have to. So in addition to providing information, what we want to do is empower people with that information. It's helpful for people to know their rights, but if they don't know how to protect their rights or enforce their rights, it's not that helpful. So all our information aims to not only explain people's rights, but give them step-by-step instructions on how to enforce their rights and protect themselves. We have more than 1,800 resources, and these are in various formats like articles, guides, forums, and videos that our team works really hard to make sure are accurate and up to date with the current law. Everything we have on our website is legal information. It's mostly civil, so not a lot of, we do have some criminal law information, but most of that tends to be related to, traffic court, and we have some information about encounters with police and your rights in those situations. And we have information as well on criminal records. Everything is information about Illinois law. We do have some federal law information, and nothing on our website is advice. We don't provide advice. We don't represent people directly. We make referrals to organizations that do provide representation, but we don't. And I think Jill is going to talk about the difference between information and advice, so I'm not going to go into that now, but just be rest assured that everything on our website is information, and everything is always free. Our website covers issues affecting lower income people. It is also accessible, which means it is device responsive, so that it looks, it's just as readable on a smartphone as it is on a desktop or a tablet. We have information in English, Spanish, and Polish, and everything is written in plain language at a 6th to 8th grade reading level. And the website is also ADA compliant. Why do people need ILAO? Many of you probably already know this. That's why you're here. But I do get that question often at libraries and other places that I visit to train. And they say, oh, we love your website, but we'd like to just refer people to the local legal aid, which is great. We want people to have a legal aid attorney if they can get one. We also make referrals to local legal aid through our website. The problem is that there aren't enough legal aid attorneys to serve everyone. So only about 26% of the people who seek help with a legal problem are actually able to get free legal aid assistance. This is what we call the justice gap, and that's why we exist. About 68,000 people turn to us every week for help. I looked it up. Let's see, that's about the population of Decatur, Illinois. All right, now I'm going to switch over to my the website. Please let me know at any time if you can't see what I'm trying to show. Hopefully you can see the website now. Okay, so this is our website, illinoislegalaid.org. We have, as I said, information in English, Spanish, and Polish. The way to access that is in the upper left-hand corner. If you click on that, you'll see what languages are available. You can click on Spanish to see the translated version. If you are helping someone and they need information in one of the other languages, and you don't speak that language, you can certainly look for the information in English, then toggle to the other language. If you're on an article or something and you click this and the language you want is not available, that just means that doesn't happen to be translated. If it's a resource that you think would be really helpful and needs, really should be translated, we can prioritize that. You can always reach out and let me know. You can also reach out through our contact us form, and I'll show that later. In the upper right-hand corner, I have to move my Zoom box here. The upper right-hand corner is a login button. People can register to use the site, but they don't have to. Anyone can register, or anyone can use the site without registering. The main reason to register is to sign up to receive our newsletter and email updates. And we encourage everyone to sign up for these so that you'll know what we're working on, what is new, and what has been updated on the website. Another reason for those who are looking for help on the website to actually register is that if they use our Get Legal Help tool to get a legal referral, they can access their referrals and any application they completed for a legal aid organization. And I will show you that tool a little later on. And this can be really important because people often do apply for legal assistance and then sort of forget it happened, or they forget the date that they made an appointment, or they need information even about the legal aid organization, and we hold that information for them if they've registered. We do have some advanced information in addition to the basic information that we provide for the public. These are advanced articles for legal professionals, so for legal aid attorneys and pro bono attorneys. If you happen upon these, so you can see their practice resources, lawyer manuals, ICL, these will actually be restricted. These, you may not go directly to them and look at them, but if you happen to be searching for something and they do show up and you click on it, often the ones that are specifically for attorneys will say for attorneys or for lawyers in the title. If it doesn't say that, you'll still probably know when you're on one of those resources because they tend to be much longer. They're not written in plain language. They have a lot of citations to like legal citations to cases or statutes. So that's kind of the way to recognize it's not the information that's for the public. Certainly, if the public wants to, they could use it. Not everyone is going to be able to read and understand that information, but if they can, they're certainly welcome to use it if it's not something that's restricted. If I click on the resources caret here, you can see that all the information on our website is organized into 9 legal categories. This is how we organize everything on the website. So from family and safety all the way down to courts and hearings. When you click on resources, there's also a link to our form library. Sorry, I have to keep moving my box so I can see everything. There's a link to our form library and also our glossary. there. Sorry, I couldn't see it. I had to shift my box around. The form library and the glossary provides definitions for legal terms. We try not to use a lot of legal terms in the information that we have, but we're talking about the law, so we want to make sure that people have the correct language when they're going to court, for instance. We want them to know those legal terms. If it's not clear from the way it's written in the resources, they can always go to the glossary and find the plain language definition of a legal term. Okay, so the 9 legal categories are here. You can also see those 9 legal categories if you scroll further down on the homepage. You can also see that each category is further broken down into subcategories. So for instance, in family and safety, you can see that the first subcategories are divorce. This is parental responsibilities, safety planning. And then if you want to see all the subcategories, you could click on the 3 dots to see a full list. So here you can see we have divorce. That's showing up at the top because that's the most popular subject in this category. Most legal aid organizations will not help people with divorce unless there is a domestic issue involved. So we do have a fairly robust offering of divorce-related resources, divorce and child support and things like that. Parental responsibilities, which is a not so plain language way of saying custody and visitation. We say parental responsibilities because that's the language that the courts use. Safety planning, child abuse, elder abuse, restraining orders. So those are going to be orders of protection, human trafficking, adoption, parentage, guardianship, 2 kinds of guardianship, emancipation, adult name change, child name change. So you can see how much information we have available just in this one section. As I said, we have 1,800 pieces of information on the website, and obviously can't tell you what those all are today, but browsing these categories and subcategories is a really good way to learn the breadth of the information on our website, and also to get an understanding of what issues are actually legal ones. Most of you will recognize a lot of these as legal issues. Some of the public may as well. Things like divorce and child support, or things where people have to go to court, they recognize those as being legal issues. But we have information on a lot of things that people don't often perceive as being legal issues. So for instance, public benefits, things like SNAP or TANF. We have school enrollment information, information about unpaid bills. What do you do if you can't afford certain bills, or you're in debt, information about that, and also utilities. So again, just sort of browsing, getting an idea of not only what we have available. And so when someone says they have an issue, you're like, oh, wait, I remember seeing that on the website, ILAO's website. But also it can sort of spark something. You're like, oh, that is something that's legal, and it might be on the website. I'm going to go take a look at it. So from this list here, you can see there are different colored icons. These are just indicating different kinds of formats that our resources are in. Getting a divorce here is this sort of bluish one. It's a guide. The green one is an easy form. The purple is a how-to, and I don't know if this is orange or salmon or what that is, but that is just an article. And there are a few other colors as well. I'm actually going to go back up. I want to show you one other thing in the resources list, and this is the IM categories. This is where if people belong to certain demographic groups, we have put together resources that could be helpful to that group. So if you're helping someone, a senior, for instance, they might want to browse this, or you might want to help them browse it. They can see what information we have available that might be helpful to them. Sometimes people, they don't know what they need, and that's when browsing can be really helpful, particularly by category or by the IM categories. I'm going to go back to the home page. So browsing is one way to find our resources. A lot of people browse, but more people search. We actually get a lot of people coming in from a Google search. Our own search here is powered by Google. If I have anybody on the training today who has had my training before, welcome back. But you may remember that the search was not great before, and now it's much, much better because it's enhanced by Google. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I know that it's using Google-ish technology or Google's technology to make sure that our search is much better and they're coming up with much more relevant results. We have the search bar on the home page. If we're on any other page, the search bar is going to be in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, so I'm going to start off. When I go to libraries and ask people what is needed, what people ask them for, a lot of times people tell me power of attorney forms. So I'm just going to type that in. You all can, let me know if there are other issues that people are asking about. And just like Google, it's going to give me a list of suggestions once I start typing, which can be really helpful. Again, if somebody doesn't know, they need a power of attorney, but they didn't know there were two kinds here on our website. So they can see, oh, there's property and there's healthcare. Okay, well, I'm going to go to power of attorney for healthcare. These are the results. The search results will show the most relevant responses first. And you can see, like, here's an easy form. Sometimes you can tell what the resource is from this search. If it says basics, it'll be a guide. The how-tos start with how-to generally, not always, strangely enough. But I'm going to click on setting up a power of attorney for healthcare. I know that's a guide, so I want to show you that. And if you don't know until you click on it, you will know once you get to the page, because it'll have that blue icon. It will also be tagged as a guide. So guides are bundles of articles and forms and information. They're all related to a particular issue, and the first page of the guide provides an overview of the issue. So that's this first page here, providing some general information about setting up a power of attorney for healthcare. Often, I think there's just one link. Often in our articles and our guides, all our resources, we will link out to either other articles and guides. We may link out to reputable websites like government websites, or the websites of our partners if we think their information is helpful. We try to cross-reference our own information as much as possible. So that's generally what you see here with these links. Over on the right, you can see what is bundled in the guide. It starts off with the take action forms. And those are the how-to articles. So we want to, again, like I said in the beginning, we want people to know their rights, or we want them to know general information about their legal issue. But then we want to give them the instructions for actually taking action. Something, a way to protect those rights, or a way to, go to court, or fill out court forms, things like that. We include those in these boxes. So for instance, I'll just show you how those how-tos are usually set up. Generally, there are a series of steps, which makes sense in a how-to, right? So number one, you're going to fill out that power of attorney for healthcare form. If we have a form, we will link to it here in the how-to generally, and then you can also see it in the forms box on the right. So here the power of attorney for healthcare form appears, and then we will also list related forms, so other forms that can be used for this legal issue, depending on a person's circumstances. So guides can be really helpful if someone needs a legal form, but they don't know the name of the form. Sometimes these names are pretty clear, and a lot of times they're not. So if they have a legal issue, they know they're going to need forms of some kind. They have no idea what to call it. It's hard to search for that. So you could always come to a guide. You know, for instance, I think a good example would be divorce forms. You know, if someone needs to respond to a divorce filing, they, you know, like, what would we start with? You can go to the How to Divorce Guide, and it will tell you what forms will be needed to respond. The last box that is included is the Learn More box. And that includes usually very specific, or it includes answers to very specific questions. So not that general article that we started with, but very specific questions that people might have. So if you are helping someone and they're reading, you know, the general information, they start asking questions, you know, hopefully that's something that we have anticipated. You know, we get these questions directly from people sometimes, and so we know these are like the most common questions that people have. So if you don't see the legal forms that you need in a guide, or you come to the website, or you're helping someone who just wants a form, because often that happens, you can come directly to our form library. Again, that's on the resources drop down, click form library. And then here you see the same 9 categories we saw on the homepage. So all the forms again are organized in those categories and subcategories, except if I click on it, it's just going to be forms. So here I went to divorce. You can also search our form library, and different from our other search bar, if you just search here, it's only going to return results that are forms. So I've said the word, or the words easy forms several times. So now I'm going to show you what that means. Okay, so here's a list of forms. So generally we have just the easy forms, or the pink icons indicate PDF forms. I'm going to show you our divorce easy form. Okay, our easy forms are not printable blank forms or fillable PDF forms, they're programs. So if you think of TurboTax, they're very much like that. If you've used TurboTax, you know that instead of trying to sit down with a stack of tax forms, which is just like mind-blowing, right? You can, TurboTax will ask you a series of questions, you answer those questions, and then at the end it spits out your tax forms all filled in and completed. That's the same idea with our easy forms. It will ask the person a series of questions that are required to be filled in on a form. And then when they've completed the program, it'll allow them to print out the completed form. And then it also provides additional instructions for filing, usually e-filing. The easy form pages include lots of information. So the Start Program button is here. So that's going to take them to start the program. But the form itself has a lot of other, the page itself has a lot of other information. So it tells them how long it will take them to complete the program. Here it says 20 to 60 minutes. It's just going to depend on their circumstances. If you scroll down below the Start Program button, the first section that all the easy form programs have, or program pages have, is the Can I Use This Program? So this is going to provide information, kind of like eligibility information, or basically tells a person, like, these are the circumstances you need to have to be able to use this form. We don't want people to use the wrong form. We also have the section, what do I need first? So the program, we don't want them to start the program and not have everything they need to finish the program. So we tell them what they're going to need to have and gather before they start the program, because they're going to need it to answer the questions. And then the last section is what documents will this create? And it lists all the possible documents that could be created. Now, this is a lot. Not every person is going to need every form, which is a really important function of the Easy Form program. It figures out, based on the person's circumstances and how they answer the questions, which forms they need. So they're not going to fill out forms that aren't needed. sometimes people come here and they'll say, well, I just want this one form, and they'll pick out a form in the list and they'll want to print it out. Unfortunately, you can't just print a form from this list. You have to fill out the entire program to get any of the forms. I'm going to scroll back up. So I'm not going to do it right now, but if you click the Start Program button, it will actually take you to one of our partners that host our forms. So it will be a separate website. There are a few different options that they might end up on. You could certainly, if you're interested, try some of the forms. You don't have to worry, it's not going to accidentally file anything. With one exception, our system is not hooked up to any like e-filing system, so it's not like you're going to accidentally file something. You could do the program or start it. You don't even have to finish it, just start it, just to kind of understand how it works. And then, you don't even need to save anything. You can just leave the program. It is important when people do the program that they do register on our partner website. That will allow them to save their information and then log back in and retrieve a copy of their form if needed. If they lose a page or spill something on it, or they look at it and they're like, oh, this is wrong, I need to add something or I need to change something. If they haven't registered and logged in and saved, they're going to have to do the whole program all over again. So it is really important to remind people to do that step, to register and to log in and to save when they're doing an easy form. And that registration process is different than the registration process for our website. So our easy forms, with just a few exceptions, are not translated. You may come to the page and you'll see that it's translated. Like, let's see, this page should be. So I could get this page in Spanish, but the document itself, when they go to the program, it's going to be in English. I'll show you where they could find an actually translated version of the forms. So just want to say, I know that people, a lot of times they come in, they maybe want a printed form, or they just take me to a form book or something. But we really try to encourage people to use the easy forms because they're really helpful when they don't have a lawyer. They just make it much easier for people to fill out complicated court forms. Number one, they ensure that the forms will be more accurate because they only ask a few questions at a time, which is much less overwhelming than looking at a court form, which of course has all the information on the page staring at them. And it provides step-by-step instructions as they go along, how to fill out each field. The form program also won't let a person skip a required field, which they could easily do on the paper form. They might do it by accident, or sometimes they'll do it on purpose because they'll say, oh, I'll come back to that. Then they don't come back to that. And then they've got a form that is not completely filled out, which is really detrimental to a person, because often that will have a detrimental effect on the person's case. Maybe their forms will be thrown out completely. So again, we try to encourage people to use the easy form programs. Now, that being said, again, I know that people really just sometimes want a printable form, or they want a PDF form maybe that they can go and fill in, and we understand that. And sometimes we do have those forms available. And generally that happens when our easy forms are based on an Illinois standardized state form. And if there is one available, if there is a standardized state form available, it's hard to say that. It's like a tongue twister. If there is one of those forms available, a printable PDF or a fillable PDF, we will link to it on the easy form page. So you're going to see it in this paragraph here. It says this program will help you avoid mistakes. As I was saying, your case could be delayed if there are errors in your forms. If you do want to download and print a PDF version, you would visit the Illinois Court Standardized State Forms website. So I'll click that and show you what that looks like. So they can come here, and this is where they can find those forms. So I'm just going to click on, I'm just going to say divorce with children. Okay, so now you're going to see all the forms that are available. And it's quite a list. So it's basically the list that we have, which sort of points out, and not all the forms are going to include a lot of form, like that power of attorney form, very simple, right? It's just that form. And maybe instructions, but this, you know, there are many, many forms that can be filled out. That's why the easy form program is nice, because it will tell somebody, I mean, it doesn't even tell them, it just basically figures out which forms they need and creates them for them. And with these standardized forms, there's a getting started guide. So that's basically who can use the form. That's like our section, which is who can use this program. And then there are instructions how to get a divorce, and the forms themselves also provide instructions. So our program form provides instructions. You know, it's not all at once, it's just a little bit at a time, so it can be easier for people to work through them. But with our easy form program, the form is going to look like this. It's just going to be all filled in with the person's information. Oh, and the other thing I forgot to mention is that if somebody comes to the easy form page, we know a lot of people, maybe they miss the information at the bottom below the start button. Maybe they just don't want to read it. We're human. We all skip instructions. We try to assemble things without reading the instructions. We try to fill out court forms without reading the instructions. So anyway, if they haven't read, who can use this program, that's okay, because the questions, those are built in. So the program is going to ask them, is this your circumstance? If not, the form is going to say, I'm sorry, you can't use this form program, which, is really helpful. We don't want them to fill out a bunch of forms when that's not the right form for them for some reason. I will show you too where you can find the forms. I think this is the right way. I knew I wasn't going to be able to find. If you go to, here it is, approved. So I'm on the Illinois courts website. I'm clicked on forms. I'm going to go to approved statewide forms. And that's where you can see the translated forms. So again, we don't have the translated forms, or the programs are not translated, but a person could see a translated version here. They can't fill out a form that is translated. It's for information only. And when you open one of those forms, it'll actually say that. So they have to fill out the English form in English. I'm going to go back to our website. Okay. So I'm going to show you some of the other features on our site. Get Legal Help, which I mentioned before. This is our tool that connects people to legal aid organizations. And the way we try to help people is to give them a referral, a very specific referral that is based on their location and legal issue. So they could type in their issue, divorce. Here, this one will also make suggestions, but it looks a little bit different. I'm gonna do 632, that's my hometown. It will ask me, what help am I looking for? I'm going to say a lawyer. Once I do that, it's going to ask me an income question, because legal aid helps people below a certain income. And then it is a high threshold because all legal aid organizations sort of have their own standards. So we kind of ask a high threshold question. It's not more than that. And then we ask if they belong to any of these groups. These are actually the same groups as you saw in the IM categories. And we do this because sometimes legal aid organizations serve people in a particular group. They might have a special program. They might only take people below a certain income, but if the person's a senior, income doesn't matter. So that's why we have this. We want to match people with the best possible option for their issue in their area. And then we would click the boxes and then click continue to get either a referral. So that would be just, you can call this organization, or in some cases, we actually link people to the legal aid organization directly, where they can actually start the application process online. So it's a lot more effective and efficient than having them call the organization. They can actually start filling their information out online, and that will get transferred to the organization. We partner with 12 legal aid organizations with our Get Legal Help tool. That includes Prairie State Legal Services, Land of Lincoln Legal Aid, and most of the larger legal aid organizations in Chicago. And so the common legal issues that we can connect people to legal aid programs are things like domestic violence. So if they are getting divorced but it involves domestic violence, that might be something that a legal aid in their area can help them with. Legal aids often help with public benefits and things like eviction. They can certainly type in any legal issue, but those are kind of some of the most common ones that will get directly to a legal aid organization. I'm going to show you our legal self-help center directory. It's actually on this page. So these are all the courts and libraries that we partner with. They all go through this training. And then once they've gone through the training and they're ready, we put their information in the directory. The directories list, their basic contact information. And also, oops, I'm going to go to the library instead. Also lists what they offer. So we wanted people to understand better what to expect. I mean, that's why we have this list here. Some of these things people just know are going to be at a library, right? Like computers, internet, usually Wi-Fi. But we also list out if, they do have someone available to help. So this one says, website navigator, navigation help is provided during open hours. So those are folks that have gone through this training, and people know if they come to this page, well, I can go to that library and I can get help on this website. I can get help finding information. We do have libraries that are listed that don't provide that navigation help, and that's okay too. It just depends on your capacity and what you're interested in doing. We just want people to know at least, if they go to that library, they're going to get at least maybe a quick referral to the website, maybe a quick explanation how to use the website, but you don't necessarily have to help someone navigate the website. It's just based on your own capacity. There is also a link to the directory at the bottom of our website here in the footer. And if you're not a legal self-help center and you're curious if there is one in your county, you can certainly go to your county and look. There's also what we call our Legal Self-Help Center Toolkit. And this is available to our Legal Self-Help Centers, but it's really available to anyone, any library that wants to use this toolkit, feel free. It's got just an overview of what a Legal Self-Help Center is and more information about us. Here's a checklist for how to become a Legal Self-Help Center. The first step is this training. And then if you go to the top, you can see what we have available. So navigator training and info, we have a few trainings up now. Illinois statewide forms, that was the website, the statewide forms website, the Illinois courts website that I showed you. If you're confused at all about those, we did a short overview, gives you more information. We do have an information versus advice training. A video that's essentially this training, so that can be shared with staff as well. And I'm not sure how many people are actually getting requests to help with e-filing. If you've encountered that, it can be quite difficult and confusing. So we do have this video And Jill's going to do the information versus advice, and she did the e-filing training for us as well. There are also flyers, legal help and other resources. So these, I tend to link to programs that people may find helpful. If you don't know about it, Illinois Court Help is a really great one. This is statewide. If people need information of anything about going to court, or they have questions about e-filing, or if they have questions about court forms, they can call Illinois Court Help. It's a really great resource. They can call, I think they can text. They might even be able to email. I think they have many different ways they can be contacted. So that's a great referral to give out to people, or it's also a resource that you yourself can use. I have other flyers. So legal self-help centers, you know, sometimes the libraries say, well, you know, people don't understand that we're not going to give advice. We try to make it very clear in the directory that you're not giving any advice. You're only providing help finding something on the website. If we don't have it on the website and you don't have it in your library, you're not going to be able to answer their questions. We just want them to know, we want them to know what to expect when they walk through the door. So that's what that flyer is for. We want to reduce frustration on both sides. I have a public benefits flyer. This is really good for sharing online because it has links. The IllinoisLegalAid.org flyer is really good to have out because it lists our most popular legal issues. And it also can be shared online. It has links to all those issues and links to our resources and some other flyers as well. So anyone can access that from the directory page. Oh, and the one other thing I wanted to say before give you some next steps is our contact us form. So you can reach out to me. I'm going to go back to my slide that has my contact information, but also if you just want ILAO cards, I should have brought one to show you, but they're just like business card size cards. And they have the URL to our website in English and Spanish, and just explains a little bit of the information that we provide. It's a really great way to just make that quick referral to our website if somebody needs legal information or they need a referral, legal aid referral, and they want to use Get Legal Help. You can just hand them that card. And you can request those through the contact us form, or you can reach out to me directly. Okay, I'm going to go back to there. So if you would like to be a legal self-help center, if you would like to be listed in our directory, please reach out to me, aclark@illinoislegalaid.org. If you write this down or you don't write it down and later you want to reach out to me and you don't have my contact information for some reason, you can always click that contact us button and just say, you know, you want to be connected to me, or you're interested in being a legal self-help center. How do you do that? Anyone now that's been on this training, your library can be listed in that directory. I could give a separate training to your other staff if you wish. You know, they could watch this recording, you know, whatever is best for you all. And yeah, just let me know. Oh, and the other thing, in addition to being added to the directory, I also encourage you to sign up for my Navigator listserv. You can also send me an email and ask to be added. And so we send out periodic information about new programs, and it tends to be more detailed than what you get through if you register and get those updates. We try to send stuff that's just more specifically for use by libraries and courthouses. And we may send out other resources like flyers or things like that. So let me know if you want to do that. Directory, listserv, or if you want flyers or cards, please let me know. And I think that was it. I think that covered everything I wanted to say. I don't know if there are any questions. People might have put them in the chat. I don't know. Brenda, were you looking?
I don't see any questions on the chat. Does anyone have any questions for Amy? Jill Roberts, our next speaker, is here, and she did put in the chat that Illinois Court Help website will go, she will give out information about that website in a little bit. I'm going to put a training feedback form in the chat if you will download that and give me feedback on it's for the whole training for the first session and second session. And I would appreciate that. You can email me or you can fax it to me. We have ended just a little bit early. Let's see here. I know Jill is here. Would we want to go ahead and go forward with the second portion, or do you want to take a break? Does anyone have a suggestion?
I'm happy to do either.
Okay, thank you.
Quick break is in the
Okay,
chat. So
let's take a quick break and come back in maybe 5 minutes or so.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so
Thank
much for
you.
attending.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks. I think I'll stick around.
Please do.
I can always learn something from Jill.
it's nice to see you, Amy. It's been a little while.
I know. Good to see you.
There was a request if you could flash your slides from the beginning. Someone had some difficulty at the beginning. If you could show some of your early slides.
Oh, should I can send that. Can we send them out? Would that be, can we do that? Brenda, should I send them to you? Or I mean, if somebody wants me to show them now, that's fine too. Oh, Brenda, you're muted.
If you send them to me, I'll make sure that they'll get sent out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just do that and then Jill, you can.
Also,
Share.
if they registered through L2, which I hope that everyone from the library did, we would, I can send those out to everyone who registered as well through L2.
Great.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what screen I'm sharing? Can anyone see?
It's your connecting library patrons to legal information resources. The first, it's like a first page.
As a slide, not my notes page.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I don't know why Zoom won't show us.
Is everyone ready to begin? Okay, our next presenter is Kate. Are you ready to begin?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't know if the recording has restarted. Did it?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, we're
Okay,
recording.
thank you very much. Our next presenter is Jill Roberts, and she's the Deputy Director of the Access to Justice Division at the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts. I'll turn it over to Jill.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. And thank you to the Library Association for having me today. We are going to talk about that kind of fine line between allowable legal information and prohibited legal advice. So we'll just go ahead and jump right in. We are hoping today to get some practical tips and strategies for handling the unique challenges that people face when they try to go to court without a lawyer, develop some skills in how to assist those self-represented litigants with understanding what's happening in court and identifying services that are allowed and those that are prohibited. So first, I just want us to think about who are self-represented litigants and what do they face when they come to court. So they, like potentially many of you, don't know all that much about the court system because you haven't had reason to be involved in it. So there's legal jargon, there's complicated procedures, there's confusing forms, opposing counsels that may or may not be very nice. There's, if you're in person, crowded courtrooms or trying to figure out how to go to court by Zoom. And what they're in court for is pretty high stakes. Certainly people are not going to court because of very happy things all that often. So, but all of us who work within the court system, as well as community partners like librarians, can be part of the solution and can provide some additional information. And ILAO, that you just learned about from Amy, is one of the #1 resources that you can always direct people to. But there's many other things that we can do as well. So I first want to attempt to show you a video. So I'm going to start it. Please let me know if there's issues with sound. That kind of explains what's the difference between information and advice.
We know that court can be stressful, and you might need help navigating the system. There are ethical rules that court staff and judges must follow. These rules limit the kinds of...
Is it working? Okay, I don't know why it paused, but we'll get back to it.
Kinds of help they can offer to people about court matters, because a court has...
I don't know why that's happening. I'm so sorry.
to stay neutral and not help one side over the other. A judge or court staff cannot tell you what you should do, but they can tell you what your options are. Think of it this way: they can tell you the rules of the game, but not what strategy to use. Legal information, the rules of the game, can be really helpful. It can inform your next steps, tell you what forms you need to fill out, or when you need to show up in court next. Legal advice is strategy, or what you should do to get the best outcome. Lawyers give legal advice. Contact your local legal aid or bar association to find a lawyer. Your local court or legal aid agency website is also a great resource for finding legal information.
So that is a video from the National Center for State Courts. So it is specific to court staff and judges, but the same information applies for anyone who is helping people with navigating the court system when they aren't lawyers. So as the video mentioned, legal information is the rules of the game. So it's general factual information about the law or legal process. So things like, what is a court summons? And you can explain what that is if you know that answer. It's the same information for everyone, and it's universal. So every single person who is trying to start a small claims case, it's the same process. Every person who's answering an eviction summons, it's the same process. It's neutral, so it's not trying to help one side over the other. It's just, again, giving that factual information, and anyone can give it. So court staff can give it, judges can give it, public librarians can give it. Justice Corps fellows, anyone can give legal information, including lawyers, if they want to just give information. Advice, on the other hand, is that strategy to try and win the game, or in this case, win their court case. It's when you're applying the law to their specific circumstance or particular facts. It's telling people what to do in their situation. It changes as you talk to different people, partly because you need to know more details and you might be trying to help one win over the other side. So it would be different. And only lawyers acting in a lawyer-client relationship can give legal advice. So that is limited to just lawyers in those circumstances. And so quick ways to spot whether what people are asking you is information or advice. Again, information are the facts about the law and process, and the questions usually start with who, when, where, and how. So it's things like, how do I file this? Or where do I go to court? Things like that. And again, it's objective, neutral information. You don't need to know a lot of details. Advice, on the other hand, is where you're trying to give information about a course of action that someone should take to try and further their own interests. Questions are usually starting with should or what. Should I file this? What should I write on this motion? And it's subjective and often requires details. But I hope that after we talk today, you will also notice that even if someone asks the question wrong or asks what is very clearly an advice question, we still might be able to provide them with some information to move them along in their case, even if it's just a referral to Illinois Legal Aid Online. So what governs what we can do is a policy by this from the Supreme Court that I'm going to put the link in the chat. So if you want to follow along, you can click on that link and follow along with us today. I'm also going to put the link to 2 other documents. They're in addition to the policy, which is about 3 or 4 pages long. There's a guide that is about 15 pages long that goes into a bit more detail on certain aspects of the policy. And then there's a 1-page desk card. And this is one that you can just keep handy at your desk and glance at what's allowed and what's not allowed. And on the back of it, it has referral information. So those are the 3 things I just put in the chat. But we're going to focus on the policy today, since that's all these other resources are just helpful supplements to that policy. So the policy itself is called the Illinois Supreme Court Policy on Assistance to Court Patrons by Circuit Clerks, Court Staff, Law Librarians, and Court Volunteers. So we have done many trainings for public librarians, and we feel that librarians are covered under this policy through the kind of court volunteers definition, because you would be providing information about court if people are asking you about it on a voluntary basis. So even though you're not physically located in the courthouse, but if you're giving information about the court, you can be considered a court volunteer. So the purpose of this policy is to provide guidance to all of those people listed in the title, which makes the title very long. So we refer to this as the safe harbor policy. So if you've ever heard that term before, this is the policy we're talking about, but we say safe harbor policy. But the goal is to really help people achieve fair and efficient resolution of their cases, and that no one should be discriminated against based on any category, including them being a self-represented litigant. So just because someone doesn't have a lawyer, they shouldn't be treated differently than people who do have lawyers in court cases. So we're going to start off by talking about Section D. So if you're following along, you can scroll down to where Section D starts, which is page 3 of the policy. And we're going to go through the permitted services. So these are all the different things that we can do. I do want to point out that all of this does say that these permitted services are based on, it says as resources and expertise permit. So we understand that you may not know answers to all of the things that people are asking you, but hopefully through Amy's presentation today, you know to maybe send them to ILAO, or you could look at ILAO and then be able to give them that information, or maybe make a referral to Illinois Court Help if you don't know something. But if you do know, you're absolutely able to tell them. So the first one is that you're able to provide information about court rules, court terminology, and court procedures. So those are all those, how do I file this? When's my court date? What does defendant mean? Anything like that, we can definitely tell people. You can let people know how to get foreign or sign language interpreters, how to get reasonable accommodations due to a disability, or how to get a fee waiver in their court case if they're not able to pay for their court fees. You're also able to help with e-filing. So Amy mentioned that we can do training for you on e-filing if you are interested. It's a very complicated system, but we're happy to do training on that. We also have some step-by-step manuals that people can use to try and figure out themselves how to get through the e-filing system. But we can help people with every step of the e-filing process, or explain that they could get an exemption from e-filing for a few reasons. For example, if they don't have internet or a computer in their home, if they don't read, write, or speak in English, so that's both literacy and limited English proficiency, or if they have tried e-filing, have been unable to succeed in doing it and can't get additional assistance. So those are some ways that they don't have to e-file. And we can tell them all about that. We can also let people know what forms they might need for their particular situation based on what they've told us, and explain the nature of the information they need to fill it out. So that might be, they might need some financial information, or they might need dates of birth or something like that. So we can let them know anything that a form asks for. And we can also record verbatim, either by writing or typing, for someone if they do have a disability or literacy barrier. We can also help review forms for completeness. So just if it's done or not, does it have something filled in every blank? We're not able to help with accuracy. We're not going to say, oh, this is good, or this is bad, or this isn't enough. It's just completeness. Do they have the county name? Do they have the case number? Is it signed? Things like that. Just, is it complete? We can also give referrals. So if you're looking at number 10 on the policy, there are several subsections for people that we can make referrals to. So pro bono legal services, low cost legal services, limited scope legal services, legal aid programs and hotlines, law and public libraries, nonprofit alternative dispute resolution services like mediation, lawyer referral services. So I'll mention a few of those when we get to referrals. Internet-based resources like Illinois Legal Aid Online, court-sponsored or affiliated education classes like parenting class or traffic safety, units or departments of government, and domestic violence resources. So that just lists a lot of different options that we have for referrals. And we can always encourage people to get actual advice from a lawyer, and then provide them hopefully with those resources for where to attempt to find one. We can also provide people information about their cases that's publicly available. So if a county has case information online and people are asking what the next court date is, we can absolutely give people that information. And this is number 13 specific to courthouses, but how to access files. So how to look up an entire file, whether that's online or in person in the clerk's office. We also, there's a few more general paragraphs. We can provide the same services to all parties in a case. So there's no issues of conflict of interest or anything like that, because we're not getting details or giving people advice. We're just giving them that procedural information so we can help everybody. We can assume that the information that we're providing to the court user is what should be done based on what they've told us. What they've told us is accurate and complete. This isn't always the case, but we're safe under the safe harbor policy that we can assume that. We can inform them about safety protocols and directions around courthouses, especially if you're in a county that doesn't allow cell phones in. That's something that you might want to know so that you can tell people that as they're preparing to go to court. We can offer educational classes and informational materials, assist people with self-guided research. So this is one that you might get asked a lot about is, can you do legal research for me? And the policy allows us to kind of set them up with how to do self-guided research, but we can't do the research on their behalf. And then there's a catch-all of provide other services consistent with the intent of the policy. So that's 19 paragraphs with several subparagraphs of things that we're able to do. And then there's about 9 paragraphs of things we're not able to do. So we'll talk about those. One is deny self-represented litigants access to any services that lawyers get or other people in the court. We can't share any information that would violate a court order or statute. We probably wouldn't have that information because we're just also seeing what's publicly available. We cannot comment on whether or not a case should be brought or has any merit. So we don't want to be discouraging people or encouraging people to file their lawsuits. We cannot give an opinion about what will happen if a case is brought. So we shouldn't say things like, oh, file this motion and it'll definitely get granted. That would be prohibited advice. For referrals, there is one limitation on referrals. So we cannot refer anyone to a specific lawyer or law firm for fee-based representation. So just kind of stick in the realm of legal aid, pro bono, low-cost services, but not to a specific lawyer for money. And then the last few paragraphs, we cannot represent litigants in court. Only lawyers who have been engaged by that person can do that. We cannot give analysis, strategy, advice, or perform legal research. We cannot tell a litigant anything we would not want to repeat in front of the other side, and we cannot otherwise engage in the unauthorized practice of law. So another catch-all there. So many more things that we're able to do than what we're not able to do. Any questions about the kind of black and white words in the policy? We'll talk a little bit more about what some of this means, but any questions so far? All right, I'll move along, but feel free to put things in the chat or come off mute and ask questions. So I want to mention referrals, so that section 10 of the policy, because that might be something that's really relevant to all of you. So the first is the Illinois State Bar Association referral service. So they have a program called Lawyer Finder. Someone can either call or go on their website and request to be connected with a lawyer. And what the service does is it connects them with someone in their geographic area who handles the type of issue that they have. And the person gets a 30-minute consultation for $25. So it's a relatively low cost option. They get a chance to talk to a lawyer. Maybe what they need to know can be answered in that 30 minutes. If not, the person can decide what to do. They may want to hire that lawyer. They may want to hire a different lawyer. They may want to go it alone as a self-represented litigant. So it's not necessarily getting someone a lawyer. It's just connecting them briefly for a lawyer for a conversation to see what should happen next for them. The other referrals are free legal services for low-income people. And so there's kind of 4 things that we're going to talk about. The first 3 are the legal aid organizations in the state. So I think most of you are in the Land of Lincoln legal aid area, but I think some are in Prairie State. So you'll want to know which of those 2 agencies covers your area. And you can make referrals to the proper legal aid organization. Carpels is one that's in Cook County only. And what they do is they can refer people to the appropriate agency in Cook County since there are so many more there. But for those of you in this library association, you're probably in Prairie State or Land of Lincoln territory. And I just want to let people know that it is definitely not a guarantee that people will get a legal aid lawyer. So just to give you a little bit of information, I'm sorry if Amy covered this. I was not able to be on at the beginning of the session, but there are capacity issues. There are just not enough free lawyers to go around. People who you already have to be very low income to qualify for legal aid services. And then even those who are financially eligible and subject area eligible, because legal aid doesn't handle every case type, only about 30% of those qualified people are able to get services, and 60% of the services they get are just advice or brief service. So very few people are actually getting representation in a case. So I just like to let people know that kind of that's the landscape of legal aid. And so it's definitely not guaranteed that someone will be able to get a legal aid lawyer. But there's another service, the one that's listed there at the bottom, Illinois Free Legal Answers. This is a web-based program where you can submit a question only about civil cases, so no criminal cases. And it's not going to be instantaneous, but the question will go into kind of a list of questions, and volunteer lawyers can go in and look at questions or subject areas that they practice and what can answer those questions. So I think they are able to, I think they're in the queue for up to 30 days. So it's not going to be fast, but it's another way they potentially could have some exchanges with a lawyer. So if a lawyer responds to their question, they can have a little bit of back and forth. It's not just a one-time deal. But that's another option that could be available for free, but it's not fast. So I just want to make you aware of that. Another great referral that you just learned all about is Illinois Legal Aid Online, so I won't get into that. But then Illinois Court Help. So this is the program that Amy mentioned. It's statewide. It's a hotline service with court staff from the Access to Justice Division who are able to help people with whatever their legal information questions are. So we do a lot of calls about how to e-file. We do a lot of when's my next court date? What's the Zoom information for court? What form do I need? We get all of it and we're able to answer all of it. So yes, as Amy mentioned, you can call the 800 number, which is on the screen, 833-411-1121. You can also text that number, or you can go to this website and there's a web form that you can submit. And then all the communication thereafter is like email. So there's 3 options right now. We're hoping to add additional things like a chat function as we continue to grow, but we're currently taking active phone calls between 8:30 a.m. and 3:00 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we do the text and emails from 8:30 to 5. And it just started a couple of years ago. This was actually a direct result of the pandemic. So, you know, for us, it's a silver lining of the pandemic that we got this really great service up and running. And we have served over or roughly 30,000 people in those first 2 years. So you can always send people to us. The picture that's on the screen there is one of our flyers. We have both flyers and posters for the program, as well as business card sized. One side is English, one side is Spanish, that you can hand out to people. So if you're interested in having those sent to your library for you to either post or hand out to people, let me know and I can get those mailed out to you. So any questions about the policy or places to refer people? All right, so we are going to move into a little bit of a quiz. So I'm going to ask people to either unmute or put in the chat, but we're going to, for every question, we're going to say whether or not answering this would be information or advice. And I might ask for how someone might actually answer the person. So if someone asks, can you look up my case number for me? Is that information or advice? All right, I'm seeing a lot of information, and that is correct. It is information, and that's under number D12 of the policy, that docket information. All right, I need to reschedule my court date. How do I do that? Yes, information. So this would be just the process in your court, in your local courthouse for what the process is for getting a new court date. And in some places it requires a motion or paperwork. And so you can definitely give them the motion form set if that is what's needed. What should I write so the judge will grant my motion? All right, I'm seeing a lot of advice. That's correct. It is advice. So that would be kind of analysis or strategy that we can't do. You probably wouldn't want to say that answer in front of the other side, or just that catch-all paragraph as well. But you can still give them some information. You can still give them the form, the motion form that they might need, and you can let them know that in motions, you write down what you want the judge to do and why. And then you can also always encourage them to get advice from a lawyer. So even though they asked you what, what they should write down, and that should signal it's like, oh no, it's advice, you still could give them some information. So switch up to that question. If they instead asked, can you help me fill this out? So would you be able to write or type onto someone's form? Is that information or advice to do that? A couple of informations in the chat. Anyone think otherwise? So this is one that's actually both. So the answer to, can you do this is sometimes. So there is that paragraph that says you can record verbatim if someone has a disability or literacy barrier. And then there are some times where it's required to help someone. There's a statute, the Illinois Domestic Violence Act actually requires specifically circuit clerks to provide clerical assistance with filling out forms for orders of protection. So there's a question sort of about technology help. So, could you help them type things in the computer? So the way that the policy is written is that for the forms themselves, the only way you could record something verbatim, whether it's typing or writing, is if they do have that disability or literacy barrier, which doesn't necessarily encompass just not having technology skills to be able to type. So forms can be handwritten. So if it's an issue where they, they do not know how to type, they could use the handwritten option. But then things like e-filing falls into that tech help as well. You definitely can help people e-file, and that can take a few different forms. It could be the person sitting at the desk and you talking them through what they should be doing. It could also involve you maneuvering the mouse and maneuvering those things, since it is this really complicated system, and you're just, assisting them getting through that and finding where the scanned document is saved on the computer and how do they upload it from there. So yes, there's a level of technology, like going to court by Zoom as well could, require some skills that people don't have. And so you're able to help with those sort of behind the scenes type of tech assistance. So there's a question about, for the forms, if you were to help them fill them out, for example, do you note it on the form anywhere? No, this has been discussed a few times with the forms committee that we have that creates the forms. Judges have talked about it a few times as well. There's no requirement that if someone helps you draft a document, whether it's a lawyer giving you brief services and ghost writing a motion on your behalf, or having someone help you fill out the forms because you broke your arm and you can't write, there's nothing that requires a disclosure of who helped with that. There's no prohibition on putting that down. So, you could put something like, recorded verbatim from the Williamson County Public Library if you wanted to. Do not have to, no requirement at all, but also no prohibition on noting that. So the question of, could the lack of typing skill be construed as a literacy barrier? Maybe. The way that literacy is defined, I think, is reading and writing. Actually, I don't know. I think there's an argument to be made there, but good question. I'll try and do a little research. Right, is typing a new version of writing? It might be. I think in this day and age, it probably is. So stay tuned on that. I'll look into that a little bit more and try and get back to the group. But I like to think that, services can be, the policy indicates that we should be doing more things to help people than to not help people, just based on the sheer number of things that we're allowed to do and things we're not allowed to do. And there's that catch-all of, providing other services consistent with the intent of the policy. So I think there's some wiggle room and some safety net if you want to interpret things very broadly. All right, so moving on to, I can't afford my court fees. What should I do? Would answering that be information or advice? Oh, we get a lot of advice in the chat. And we get an info, we get both, we get should, yes. So this tells me you all have been paying attention, which is wonderful. The question is phrased as should, so that triggers that it would be advice. But really, someone's just potentially needing the information about the fee waiver process. So you could answer it by saying, there's a procedure for asking for your fees to be waived. Here's the forms that you can fill out. And thank you for writing the word could in the chat. Yes, we never want to be telling people what they should or shouldn't do. That's where it's considered advice, right? You have to do this. You should do this. But if you say you can ask the judge to waive your fees, and here's how you do that, they can then choose whether or not to do that. Same with the motion. You can write down what you want the judge to do and why, and then they will either do that or they won't. So yes, it's just giving them information. They phrased the question wrong, so to speak. They phrased it like it's asking for advice, but we can answer it with information and just let them know there is a process and this is the form they fill out to try and get that. All right, I'm trying to e-file my paperwork. What case type do I pick? Would answering that be advice or information? Any guesses on that one? Yes, I see some information coming in. Absolutely. It is information. It's section D5 of the policy, all those subparagraphs of all the things we can do to help in e-filing. It's all just information. I'm going to put a link right now in the chat to the landing page where we have our e-filing manuals. So this right now has step-by-step guides for the 10 steps of e-filing, both in English and Spanish, and it has a couple of audio-visual guides as well. This is for a platform that currently exists. There's going to be another set of manuals at the end of the month for a new platform that people can use to e-file. So there'll be two options. Eventually, the one that's there now and what these manuals are for is going to go away, but we don't know that date yet. But just FYI, if you get familiar with this, and then the next time you go to it, there's different information, that's why, is that they're updating these e-filing sites. But if you've never logged into the e-filing system, I recommend that you do that, make an account for yourself, look at these manuals, see if you could, do anything in the e-filing system. You can do everything up to the point of hitting submit, so don't hit submit unless you're actually filing something, but play around with it because it does take a bit of getting used to if you want to try and help someone with e-filing. It's much easier for you if you've played around with it a bit and know a bit about it. All right, if someone says, do I have to go in person to the courthouse for my court date? Is answering that information or advice? Yes, that is information. It's a little bit tricky because it could sound like they're saying, like, basically, do I have to go to my court date? That's a strategy decision. You could say, no one has to do anything, but if you don't go, you could get a judgment against you, or, whatever like that. But really the crux of this is, do I have to go in person, or maybe could I Zoom in? And so knowing what the procedures are for your courthouse, or knowing how to look that up, is another way where you can give people that information. We don't want to say, oh yeah, you absolutely have to go to the courthouse, or else, something's going to happen, because maybe they don't have to go to the courthouse and it's Zoom. So just knowing what those procedures are, and then letting them know that this is how that court functions, and then whether or not they attend, whether it's in person or on Zoom, is up to them, of course. So pausing there for another moment for questions, since, seeing how the policy practically plays out. All right, we'll do a couple more in-depth explanations or scenarios to see how we might be able to help some people. So Jamie just got to the courthouse at 1 p.m. and was told their hearing was at 10 a.m. They had written it down wrong, and they've missed court, and a default judgment was entered. Jamie was told by someone in the courtroom that you would be able to help them fix it. Are we able to do anything? Tell them anything, any information, or would answering anything they have to say be advice? Or does anyone have, something they might be able to tell them? Put anything you want in the chat, even if it's a question. Or do you think we just say, sorry, Jamie, you were late? Nothing can be done. So at the very least, if they're at your library, you'd want to give them information to the circuit clerk's office to find out, what did happen. Maybe it was just continued to another court date. And so you could find that information, help them find that information out from the clerk, and then they could go to their other court date. If they need to do something else, again, maybe it's through the circuit clerk's office, but they can explain the court process. If someone misses court and a default judgment is entered, there's motions they could file to try and get that vacated. You can give them forms, but again, we're not telling them what they should do or have to do, because that would be that kind of strategy and analysis. But yeah, if you know what the process is. Oh, thank you, Amy. Amy just put a link to the ILAO information about vacating a default judgment. So yeah, you going to ILAO or sending them to ILAO to find the stuff, or calling the circuit clerk's office to find out if they even need to do that, right? Because if it was just continued, they don't have to. So a lot of this is just kind of knowing where to find that information, or where they can then find that information. All right. Pat calls the library and says they want to get remarried soon, so they have to file for divorce, and they have no clue where to start. They don't know where their spouse currently lives. They think they might have actually been deported, and they mentioned they don't have a computer at home. What might you be able to do for Pat? Any ideas? Any ideas? Direct to a self-help center for computers. Look up the divorce section of ILAO. Ask them to come into the library, and they can use your computer. Let Pat use the computer and get on ILAO. Lawyer in the library program. Yes, these are wonderful. And Amy put the exact link for divorce. You are awesome, all of you. So yes, you can explain what the court process is if you know it, or I have it right there, probably refer to ILAO, especially about maybe that service of process issue where they don't know where the person is. Give them forms. So you can always send people to this landing page for the statewide forms, which I am going to put in the chat as well. So get familiar with this site if you aren't already. This shows you where all of the statewide forms are. Anytime that we have one of those automated interviews that ILAO has done, it's linked to the top of those forms. So it's good to get familiar with what we have on a statewide basis. Some of your local courts may also have additional forms, and ILAO has additional forms as well. But knowing where the forms are, how to get to them, and which ones we have is always great. So you can help them get their forms, get them filled out, and then get them filed with the court through e-filing, all by using your computer in your library, or for the e-filing piece, maybe providing that exemption. And if any of you have lawyer in the library programs where they have the opportunity to speak with a lawyer to actually get advice, that could be a really great resource to let them know about as well. All right, Alex would like to change their name. Alex asks what they need to do and are particularly concerned about a couple of arrests in their past and whether they have to tell the court. While Alex is on the line, they also want to know information about how to change their child's last name on the birth certificate because it's not the correct last name. So a couple of different name change issues. Anything we can do to help Alex? One thing that hasn't shown up in the chat is sending anyone to Illinois Court Help. So don't forget about that resource. So this is one where it's a great idea to get familiar with the forms. So if you go to the forms page and go to the adult name change instructions, you'll actually see that there's reference to criminal record and whether they have to put it on forms. So if you have looked at those form set and you know that, you could answer their question of like, oh yeah, the forms say this needs to go on here, but you don't want to say anything like, oh, but because you have a record, you can't do this, or your record is disqualifying. That would be crossing the line to making an assessment of some sort about their eligibility for this relief. That's for the courts to do. So yeah, you can give them forms. You can have them read the articles on Illinois Legal Aid Online. And then potentially they might need to go to a different government office. It might not be a court issue. So the child's name for the birth certificate might be the Department of Public Health that handles vital records. It might not be a court issue. So just again, kind of maybe doing a little bit of research and figuring out who or where the person might need to go to resolve their issue. All right, I actually have a sample document that I'm going to put on the screen and ask you if you know what it's for. So if you were given this form and asked to fill it out for the court, do you think you'd know what to do? And do you have any questions about it? So someone says they have a language barrier. Absolutely. This is to demonstrate two things. One is, kind of what documents might look like for someone who is limited English proficient or someone who might have a literacy barrier. So even though we have these court forms that people might be able to use, they may not be all that usable for certain people. So just want to keep that in mind. And this is particularly relevant, for those of you who don't work in the courthouses and work in those public libraries. Your knowledge too of legal jargon and things like that might be much more aligned with people that we're serving than those at the courthouse. So we had a self-represented litigant in a video that we did a couple years back say legalese isn't anyone's first language. And that is very true. So I always like to remind people that we do have a plain language policy from the Supreme Court that just encourages judges and court staff and anyone helping self-represented litigants to not use legalese and to use plain language whenever practicable. So if there is a legal term that has to be used for whatever reason, try and define that for the person. So hopefully that's not an issue for you at your libraries, but there's no reason why we still use Latin in some legal terminology and things like that. So the more plain that we can all speak, the better for everyone. I also wanted to mention language services. So for those of you in libraries, you may or may not have access to services for interpreters or translation for materials. So there's a service called Language Line, which is an on-demand interpreter service over the phone. It's good for, finding out what someone might need or helping them, but we always like to do a little word of warning that there's no actual qualifications or certification process for anyone to be an interpreter on Language Line. So you don't quite know the quality of the interpretation that you're getting. But if it's just to try and help someone navigate through something, it is a resource that exists, but it does also cost money. So that could also be limiting for some people. But there's also some apps that can be used on computers or smartphones. Google Translate is one that is free and, again, could just be used to get people to know exactly what the person even needs. So hopefully, if your area has language needs, you might already know of some resources, but we just always like to mention that we do care a lot about language access. And so we like to make people aware that they should be doing something to try and serve all the patrons that they're seeing. And for when the cases are getting to court, there is an official registry that the courts can use and people can ask that there be an interpreter present. So just kind of knowing about that. So I have a link that I'll send the slides to Brenda to circulate to the whole association. But all the links that I've been sending for kind of the safe harbor policy and things like that, they're all on a landing page that I've linked here. Email me if you want flyers or posters or business cards for the Illinois Court Help program. And yeah, questions, comments, concerns, suggestions. I open the floor. Anything? The chat open. Don't see anything coming through. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me today. Please reach out with the requests for materials or questions that you have about anything related to the courts and accessing the courts. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jill. Are there any last questions at all for Jill? And if not, I just want to say thank you again to Kate Kite and all the administrative staff at the Illinois Heartland Library System, and also acknowledge the support of our Chief Judge, William Thurston, and the First Circuit for his support of our programs that we do through the Access to Justice grant. Thank you to Amy Clark and to Jill Roberts for all this great information. And I'm going to put in a chat a training feedback form. If you don't mind filling that out and either emailing that to me or sending it by fax, I'd appreciate it. Then those, the administrative staff and the presenters will get a copy. You don't have to put your name on it, just send your feedback and we would appreciate that. So I want to send this back over to Kate.
And I just want to thank you, Brenda, for putting this training together and offering this. Thank you, Jill and Amy, for your wonderful presentations. And thank you all for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. So everyone have a great day and take care.
Thank you so much.